Well, thank you so much for being with us on these missionary stories. And today I just want to take just a second and talk to you a little bit about the language and learning the language. Everything I know about learning a language, I learned from Georgia Webb at Hermana Luisa in Mexico. And then I watched it work in the lives of many, many people over the years as they went through our language school and learned it. I never taught in a language school. I just organized it, copying everything I'd watched at Hermana Luisa do. And there are 4 stages that you want to work on in your language learning. Number 1, she used to have us practice listening. Now, I know you think that sounds crazy, but our first quarter's assignment was every day for 30 minutes to an hour. We were to take a sheet of paper and we were to listen to people talking. And all we had to do was write down, I spent 30 minutes listening to children in the street, to a television program, to a radio program, to preaching at church, to whatever it was. You had to write down what you'd been listening. And then you were supposed to write down, I was trying to hear how they say the letter A. Another day, I was trying to hear the letter E. The letter E in English and the letter I, E in Spanish, and O and R. I want to hear the R. I want to hear the R's in the language. And so you practice listening, because you see, that's what happened when you were growing up. You were in the womb. You listened for 9 months. You know, we don't believe that's a fetus. We believe it's a baby. And that baby can hear its mama. It knows its mama's voice when it's born. It actually knows its daddy's voice. It knows that it's being born into a happy place or a sad place. And so it starts with listening. And the second thing that we were told to work on, this happened, sorry about that. You put up a hand signal and the camera just does crazy stuff. But the second thing that happened was she told us we were to practice talking. So the first quarter, which was basically 2.5 months, we were to spend listening. The second quarter, we were to spend talking. And so you'd write down, I spoke with Jorge. I spoke with George for an hour yesterday. We talked about this, and this. And so you would write down what you talked about with George or whoever it was you was talking with, and you did that at least 5 days a week. You could listen, you could talk to people at church, you could talk to people in the market, you could talk to anywhere you want to talk to. You could talk to more than one person, or you could talk to one person. But it starts, and that's how children learn. You remember, you started out as a baby, you listened. In fact, it's when you're first born, you listen, and it's weeks, months before you say your first words, and mom and daddy argue over what they are. You know that. And then the baby starts talking, but the baby can't read and the baby can't write. And maybe it's already quit listening. I don't know. That's a joke. But then the next thing you teach them is to read. And so we would then, the next 2.5 months, we had to give a reading report. I read for 30 minutes. This is what I read, Bible verses or a book or a newspaper, or whatever it was. And this is some things that I picked up and learned this time. Because you remember, that's what you did when you went to school. When you went to school, they pulled out a book and you read, and it showed you these letters and these symbols form these words. And you learned how to read. So you'd learned how to listen, you'd learned how to talk, then you learned how to read, and then finally you start learning how to write. So last semester we had to write up an article 5 days a week, 1 page, handwritten, and she corrected the fire out of it. So those are 4 stages to language learning that I would suggest that you work in wherever you are. I want to remind you that that's really how it works even in the hardest languages in the world. You know, they don't start teaching Japanese babies how to write and read when they're 6 months old. But they are learning how to listen, just like our culture. And you know what? Then they'll start talking. Now, maybe they don't read next, and I won't argue that. I don't know. But maybe they don't read next, maybe they write next, or maybe they do, I don't know. But I know this, at home, children always start listening, then children start talking. So there's a good place for you to start in learning the language. And don't listen to other Americans, listen to native speakers, you know, and get out of your house. Remember what I'm about to say to you. Language learning is a social activity more than it's an academic activity. It's about people, not books. And if you hang around your house too much, it's going to hinder your learning. And so you want to get out where you're talking to people. That's how you learn to talk. Your mama understood you before anybody understood you. Then your daddy slowly started picking up on it or whatever. Not trying to make any kind of comment there. Just saying, you start by listening, then talking, then maybe reading and writing. So why don't you put that into practice as you're trying to learn a language, and I think it might help you. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you will. If you give it a like, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so very much.